Hello everyone, welcome to Build with Hussain, and in this video we are going to learn about HTMX and how we can use it in Frappe framework. So HTMX is a JavaScript library, and unlike Vue or React, it is not a framework, but it is unique. What I mean by unique is like it gives you access to Ajax, CSS transaction, etc., directly in HTML using attributes. So you don't have to go into a separate JavaScript file to add this stuff, right? So their philosophy is simple. Like, why should only A tag, which is anchor tag and form tag, be able to make HTTP requests, right? Why should only click and submit events trigger them? So using HTMX, you can write attributes such as, okay, on the click of a button, make a post request to this path, and whatever is returned, right? And in general, it is always HTML. Just swap the outer HTML, right? With whatever the content or the response that came back from the server. So there is a whole book that you can read about the philosophy of hypermedia systems. So for our case, we are going to build a small bookshelf application which will help us learn how to integrate HTMX and Frappe framework. So let's get started. But before we jump on to that application, I have already created a site and an app, right? Which is called HTMX_portal. You can find the link to this app down below or GitHub. And what we are going to do is we are going to create a simple portal page. Let's call it bookshelf.html. I'll just put some boilerplate HTML code. Let's call it my bookshelf, and I'll put an h1 here. My bookshelf. Cool. Let's go back. Let's go open this site that I have created. Slash, it will be book shelf. That is how www directory works. You create a file and it is file based routing. So bookshelf.html is available at /bookshelf. So yeah, we have a simple portal page. This just renders this. So how do we integrate HTMX, right? So let's jump back to the HTMX website, go back to documentation, and we'll start at installation. So this is, by the way, not an HTMX tutorial. There are a lot of features, so you can go over the documentation in order to learn them. So the major point of this video is how you can integrate the two, Frappe framework and HTMX. So there are a variety of ways which you can install it. The simplest is via CDN, but it is not recommended in production. So by the end of this video, we will move away from this. But for now, I'm just going to copy this script because it's easier to get started. And you can just add this to your head tag, which means right here. And we have HTMX on this portal page, right? So to try it out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically add a button which says ping, and I will create a div here with an ID of response. I'll keep it empty. So what I want is, so whenever the user clicks this button, ping, /API/method/ping should be called. That is a special endpoint in Frappe which returns pong, which means the site is active and running, right? So in HTMX, you can add this attribute hx. To make a get request, you can do get. To make a post request, you can do post, etc. So I will do hx get, and the path API/ I'm going to use v2. Doesn't make much of a difference, but it's the latest /ping. So let's go back to our site, and if we refresh, there is a button. Let's open up JavaScript console and network tab specifically and click on ping. So the request was made and it returned 200 and with the data of pong. And whatever was returned, if you see closely, was replaced, like the button's content was replaced with the response. So this is the default behavior HTMX. So you can say, instead of replacing this with the response, you can give it a target, place whatever is returned in this div. So we can tell that by hx target and give it a CSS selector. In this case, it will be hash response, means ID of response, an HTML element with the ID of response. So let's go back, let's refresh, ping, and you get Pong. By the way, there is no page refresh or anything because it is Ajax. So this was a simple test that HTMX is there. And now it's time to build the actual bookshelf, right? So what I want to do is, first, I don't like this styling. So I'm going to use Pico.css, which is a minimal CSS framework for semantic HTML. So you write HTML, it will automatically style based on your semantic HTML stuff. So quick start. Again, I'm going to use CDN for now, and I will paste it right below the script. And once I go back to my bookshelf, you will see we got a very different styling going on. And recently Pico released a version 2, and there they have color schemes. So you can have dark mode, this, that. There is a version picker. So I'm going to go with lime. And as you can see, it is just adding .lime to the file name. So pico.lime.min.css. And now if I go back to bookshelf and refresh, you will see that we have the lime theme applied. So let's get rid of this and start from scratch. What I want now is, okay, let's format, and I want, so this is empty by the way. So I want a navbar, a simple navbar would do, and then two sections, one to add new books and one to show the existing bookshelf, right? So I'll go back to Pico and let's see if we can find a navbar, components, navbar. Let's copy this, just HTML. You can see there is no classes or anything applied, right? So I'll just copy this, paste it in the body. I'll call it my bookshelf, right? Remove this links, about is fine. Let's go back, refresh, and we have this. And as you can see, this is like not properly styled, right? So what you can do is you can apply a class of container. So Pico also brings some classes for utility purposes. And let me just zoom out now. Much better. And now what I want is a main section where I will have a grid. So this is Pico's feature, by the way. And I want two divs. So there is this article tag in HTML, which Pico styles differently. If you see it closely, you will see it is kind of a card. But yeah, exactly, it is a card. If you see, the article tag is a card. Let's go back. And before we start putting in some data or input fields, let's create a simple DocType that will basically help us to store that data, right? To do CRUD operations. So I will go back to tail.localhost/app, and I will go to DocType list. So I will create a new DocType named book. The module will be HTMX portal, that is our app. And let's create and continue. Let's add a new section. And in this, I will just add one field called author, make it mandatory. I'll go to settings, and in the naming rule, I will say set by user. So the user can set a name for the book. Let's hit save, go to book list, and I want to add a new book. Let's grab Harry Potter. from Google. Let's click this one. So I will grab Harry Potter and Philosopher's Stone. And J.K. Rowling will be the author. Hit save. Now we have one book going on here, and that's what I'm going to fetch in the bookshelf for now in this area. For that, since this is a server rendered page, Jinja, we can directly say we want an ordered list, and in there loop over the books. So I will say, first I will grab the books, by the way, from the database. So we can use Frappe APIs for that. I will say, so maybe let's zoom in a bit. Set books equal to Frappe dot db dot, we can do directly get all book, and I want the two fields which are name and author, and let's also order by creation descending, so the newest books appear at the top. And now you can just do a for loop here, for book in books, right, and for, so I will render a li tag for each book dot name and book dot author. Let's go back, refresh, and as you can see we have this. Okay, let's remove this. We have the one book here. I am too zoomed in. Let's zoom out a bit. So this is server rendered, everything is fine. We haven't used HTMX yet, right? And let's also add a form here to create new books right from here, right? We don't have to go back to the desk. So I'm going to go to Pico. I can search for form, by the way. Yeah, forms, overview, and I'm going to copy this one. I will paste it in this div, or maybe we don't need a div. Form element is sufficient. And first name will be basically the book title, right? I will call it name. This is what it will be referenced in the backend. Placeholder will be Harry Potter. Autocomplete, we don't want any autocomplete. Email will become author. Type text is fine, which is the default one. Name will be author. We don't, okay, maybe let's add a placeholder, and autocomplete we don't want. And let's make both of this field required, by the way, because that's mandatory in the backend. And instead of subscribe, this will be create. Just create is fine. Let's come back. Let's go back to bookshelf, refresh, and as you can see we have two input fields, nicely styled, and we can start. As of now it doesn't do anything because we are not doing anything in the form. So let's now refer to HTMX. So because we don't want to, even if you just directly post the form, you will have to handle it in backend and redirect somewhere. So we'll use HTMX here. Let's go to docs, and there are triggers which you can see, and I will look for the form. As you can see, you can do hx post and it will send in all the data on submit. So let's do hx. I want to make a post request. So where should we make the post request, right? So if you know Frappe REST API, you can do that. So let's say /API/v2/document. So this is the default REST API that is automatically there for us. Book. And this should work, right? This should work. So let's go back. Let's create a new book. My book. I am the author, right? Let's create. And if you see, the JSON response was returned and it was replaced here. And if you refresh the page, you will see that indeed the book got created. But this is not what we want, right? HTMX assumes the response will be HTML. So we have to write our own API endpoint, and somehow we have to make that return HTML. Because by default, this REST API endpoints return JSON. So let's go back to book.py file, which got created when we created this DocType, and I will define a new method here called newBook, which will be a whitelisted method because we want to call it from the front end. Whitelist, and then I will access the request data, frappe.formDict, which give me the data, and I can say, so the name will be, so we can do this, we can say book equal to frappe.newDoc book, book.name equal to data.get name, right? Book.author equal to data.get author. Now we can say book.insert. Now comes the problem, right? Now we have to return some HTML, and what do we return, right? What do we return? So what do you think we should return, right? So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to return the new list, right? After the book has been inserted, we want this to auto refresh. So we can easily do that in HTMX. So if we say whenever this form is submitted and whatever data is returned, just populate it here, right? So how do we return HTML from here, right? So you can't directly say this, go and say return an h1 from here. That won't cut it, right? Because if you try to do this, let's say hello, and we replace this with API/v2/method/book, and you can directly refer to any of the methods in this controller find. This is API v2 in Frappe. So cool. And you can say new book. I'll go back. Let's try this again. Test author, create, and as you can see, it's still not completely HTML. So Frappe wrapped whatever we returned here in JSON. So the only way out is to manually return a response object, which will come from workzook, right? And in that case, Frappe will pass it as is. So let's do that. So first of all, I want to import, or we can refer to Frappe to find out what we need to import and where we need to import it from. So I'll just global search for response, and it is workzook.wrappers import response. Let's go back, paste it in. We don't need request. So now I will say response, right? And I go back, I refresh, another test, my favorite author, create, and as you can see, now HTML was returned, right? So this is the core, right? If you want to return HTML and HTMX require you to return HTML, you just have to return responses from here. And this is the core. You can stop the video right here, go and experiment yourselves, but I'm going to show you some tips and tricks which will help you do some clean coding along with HTMX and dry as well. So instead of returning this, as I said, right, we want to return the list of this stuff, and we already have it rendered here. We can use the includes feature of Jinja here. So I'm going to go into the templates folder. In the includes, I will create a book list.html file, and I will move this code from here to here. So fetching of books and rendering of the list. And using Jinja, I can say include and give a path to that template file. So this will just include this part of Jinja right here. So while rendering, right? So templates slash includes slash book underscore list dot html. Let's check template slash include slash book list dot html. So if you go back right now, right, if you even if you refresh, you will see the same result because it does what it does. But now you get one benefit. You can reuse this, right? So you can just come here and say return Frappe dot render template. So we want to render a template, which will be this thing here, right? So the same path we gave here, we can copy this and paste it here. And if I go back, refresh, another one, test, create, the list got returned, right? And now there is just one thing left to do. Instead of replacing the content of this, we want to replace the content of this, which should be easy. By now we have learned about HX target. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, give this an ID of articles, no, book list, right? Copy this and I will say HX target equal to the HTML element that has an ID of book list, which is this. So let's go back. Let's create a new book. As soon as I hit enter, right, or click this button, notice this part. Ta-da! Ajax, right? And you didn't have to jump to JavaScript a single time. We just added attributes, and I think just 2 attributes. Yeah, this and whatever is returned. The actual magic is returning HTML, right? You return HTML, it will replace, and it has a lot of other useful things as well. You can have a loading integrator, so on and so forth. So read the docs. And let me know in the future if you want a detailed HTMX tutorial. Maybe I'll create one. This was a neat trick. Let's clean this up. I don't like this huge one line. So we can say books list HTML equal to, we can cut this out and put it here, and we can say books list HTML, and it will still work. Let's refresh. Book is Harry Potter 2 J.K. Rowling. Create. Ta-da! So let's do one more thing. Maybe we can do a refresh list button here. Let's add a button. Maybe I will add a button here. Button refresh, and I will say do what? Make a get request to somewhere, and then whatever is response, right, the refreshed list, just do the same thing as we did right here. So replace the contents of this thing here with the new stuff that you receive from the backend. And let's say API slash v2 slash method slash book, and I will create a new method for this called books list, and let's quickly create a new method just to give one more example. Frappe.whitelist, and here it is more easy, just this 2 lines. You can even make this dry, so create a function that returns this, right? Or even better, we can just do this. Let's go back. Let's refresh. We have a huge refresh button. We should have put this inside a div. So let's wrap this in a div. And we should be good to go. So let's also make this one. Okay, let me break this down into multiple lines so it's readable. We can format as well, but format doesn't do any good. So we can keep what we had. And I'm going to make this button a secondary button. So in Pico, you can just say secondary and it will make it a secondary button. Refresh. I'm clicking refresh, nothing is happening. Maybe something is, we don't know. So let's go to backend and create a new book named, what's the book I'm reading these days? On Writing Well. And On Writing Well was written by William Zinsser. Let's add this, hit save, go back to bookshelf, refresh, and this is the entry, right? So we didn't have a refresh page or anything, we used HTMX, even the refresh feature, and it was very easy, right? Like, yeah. So there is some thinking change you need to do, but it will prevent a lot of DOM manipulation, etc., and without relying on a reactive framework like Vue or React, right? So read more about it, experiment with it. The only philosophy or the trick here, right, is to remember that how to render HTML from your API endpoints. As a bonus, I want to show you how you can set up HTMX directly in your custom app instead of relying on a CDN. So it says the next easiest way to insert copy into your project. Download HTMX and add it to the appropriate directory and include it, right? So let's download it. I will just say copy everything, right? And I will go to my custom app. Inside the public directory in the JS, I will add htmx.js and I will paste in the stuff, the whole code, and then what we can do is we can go into our bookshelf HTML and replace this source with /assets/ the name of our app, which is htmx portal/js/htmx.js. This is how we serve static assets in Frappe. So you put them inside your public directory and then you can access them like this. Now we don't need integrity and cross origin. Let's go back and reload. And this should still work as is. Let's try again. Last one. Yes, sir. And this is it. If you have any other requests for videos, post them down in the comment. Do hit subscribe if you are liking the series, and see you in the next one. Bye bye till then.